to join in. And as the YouTube link gets activated with our technician here in the IT lab of Kamal College, we request you to get ready, as we will shortly begin with the masterclass on partition and culture with our resource person who's joined us from Finland, Dr. Maria Lee Wallenius. I think we can start off with this class. Lee, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. We are recording this video, recording this masterclass for so that we can use this for future educational purposes. Good day, everybody, and welcome to this masterclass on partition and culture. We have with us our resource person, Dr. Maria Lee Wallenius. On behalf of the Department of English, Kamal College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Nuwe Goa, I welcome you all for this masterclass. Let me take the pleasure of introducing myself first, Dr. Glenis Maria Mendonça, Associate Professor, Kamal College for Women, along with my colleagues, my head of department, Ms. Roxana Singh. Roxana, can you come on video, please, and say hi? That's Roxana. Yeah. My colleague, Dr. Brian Mendonça, who teaches the paper Partition Literature for the second year BAs. Brian, that's Brian. I have my two or three younger colleagues along with me here. Ms. Jolene, who has logged in from the department ID. Jolene, can you please come in on video?
Hi. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Wallenius.
Hi, nice to meet you too.
Yeah, we're looking forward to your session.
Thank you.
And we have Aisha. We have Aisha Pantao. She's a colleague. And we have Ms. Ashwini Kumar, another faculty from the Department of English. Ashwini?
Yes. Hi.
So these are my colleagues, and along with who form the Department of English here at Kamal College. And we are delighted to have you, Dr. Maria Lee Wallenius. For the information of all, Dr. Maria Lee Wallenius hails from Finland, and for a long time she had a desire to study English literature. Now in 2003, Dr. Maria Lee, we call her affectionately Lee, enrolled herself as a student for the Bachelor of Arts degree at the prestigious Lady Shri Ram College for Women, New Delhi. Delhi has been her second home, and she continued there after her BA with MA in linguistics, and thereafter she completed her full-time MPhil in linguistics from Delhi University. In January 2021, she successfully defended her PhD thesis titled A Tale of Two Countries, a comparative study of partition literature of India and Finland, under the guidance of Professor K.S. Bhatt. So in this thesis, she compared the partition of Finland and India, which happened simultaneously, 1945 Finland, 1947 India. And she brought in very interesting comparisons, not just from the world of literature, but also through her own personal field work in both the countries. And being a Finnish, she could relate to the Finnish works which were written in her regional language there. So over to Dr. Wallenius, who is now going to make a presentation on partition and culture. Lee, the stage is all yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Glenis. And thank you so much for this opportunity. And to address, to talk to you all about partition and culture. And when I started to think about my PhD at Goa University, my initial thought was to compare the partitions and women's experience, and especially how much violence there is toward women in both of these partitions. But as I was reading the Finnish novels, looking for the primary text for the course for my PhD, I think I read about 16 or 17 novels, and I was looking for some signs of violence toward women, and I really didn't find any. And there was only in all those novels, there was one incident of a near rape of a pregnant woman, but that was only a near rape. And but nothing happened, no descriptions. And all the other novels, there was no mention of violence toward women. And when I compared it to the Indian novels that I had, because also I read a lot of Indian novels to pick my texts from for the Indian side, on the descriptions of violence toward women, that was openly described, and it was sometimes very graphic. So I was wondering, what is the difference? Why are the way we tell stories and our literatures about partitions are so different? So then this led me to look for some women who had gone through this partition in Finland. And I found 3 ladies, and they were ages, I think, 87, 92, and 94. And they had been, they were born in Karelia. I'll tell you in a bit what is Karelia and where is Karelia. But they were born in Karelia, and they had to leave Karelia because of the war between Russia and Finland. And I asked them, I asked these ladies if they had witnessed any violence toward women. And they almost giggled and said, like, no, I never saw anything. One woman, she was 87, she said, like, the only time anything untoward happened to her, or what she experienced, was a painter in her village that made some not so nice suggestions to her. But that was before the war. But nothing bad happened during the war, according to these ladies. So I was wondering, what is wrong? What makes a difference? I was almost thinking, like, what is wrong with my people? Why, like, no, because we know that when we look at war, we look at any of these big events in different countries. One of the tools that is used for war is violence toward women and rape, especially. So I knew that, and that's like something that is reported in the news all the time, everywhere. But in these texts, I didn't find any of it. In these ladies' interviews, they didn't tell me any of it. So that made me wonder, what makes a difference? And then I thought of culture, and how culture, what affects their writing. So culture that must be one of the big differences between Indian and Finnish partition literature. Why Indians describe more graphically, at least the text that I read, they described much more graphically what happened to women. And in Finland, they didn't describe it at all. So that is what led to my second hypothesis of my PhD, which was to see how culture and memory are affected. They affect partition narratives and the technique of a writer. So I will turn on my PPT now, so you can see it. Can you see it now? Could someone say yes or no?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay, you can see it yet. Okay, sharing. Oh, I am so bad at this. Share there. That's it. Share. Is that it?
No, you have to click
Can you
on
see anything?
present now. Click on present now at the bottom.
I did. And I am hitting sharing. But no, nothing.
No. No. Not yet.
It just. I'm so sorry. Cancel. Presents now. Entire screen. Glenys,
Yeah.
Dr. Glenys,
Yes.
what is happening?
We're not getting it. Now undo it and go on present now. Go on.
I am trying to
Take it.
present now.
Yeah. And then entire screen.
How about a window?
Not a window.
And now? Do you see it now?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, so partition and culture. And to set the context, in the 1940s was a very significant decade for both India and Finland because of of course, the war in World War II in Finland, and then the departure of the British from India. And though these countries are very different culturally and in many ways, but there are these similarities, especially even just about the events that happened in history, because both of these partitions have to do with independence. India was finally able to wrest hers from England, from the British, and then Finland was able to protect hers and fight for hers against the Soviet Union. And both the partitions, they resulted in massive relocations in India. I mean, you all know that in India, of course, I'm preaching to the choir here, but in India, 12 million some people had to relocate one way or the other. And also in Finland, at that time, Finland had about 3.5 million people, and 500,000 people had to relocate to make room. And as Russia was coming in, they had to relocate further into Finland. And of course, this all was at a tremendous cost to people. And that was their homes, their lives, their livelihoods, their citizenships. So many things were affected. And in Finland, we had 3 wars. In 1939, Stalin attacked. On the bottom here, you can see this is called Karelia, and here is Russia, the Soviet Union. And Stalin wanted to attack Finland and take Karelia, and actually he wanted to take all of Finland. And he thought it would take 2 weeks. He thought they would just come and occupy Finland in 2 weeks, but Finland thought different. And in 1939, when Russia attacked, it was first war we had was Winter War, and that only lasted for about 40 days. And Russia attacked, and they took a part of Finland. And then came this interim peace of a little over a year. And after Winter War, these Karelians had to move somewhere else in Finland. The government of Finland was relocating people into different homes and farms, and they basically told the Finnish population that if your house is this big, you should be able to house at least 2 or 3 Karelians. So Karelians were sort of forcibly relocated into different parts of Finland. And then after the interim peace and the continuation war started in 1941, Finland wanted to go and attack Russia and take back the portions that Russia had taken from them. So as the soldiers progressed further into the Soviet Union, all these civilians who had to relocate into Finland, they left those places and they wanted to go back home. So they went back home and they rebuilt it. They rebuilt their homes, they redid their farms, and they lived there for the next 3.5 years while the war was basically there. Here, if you can see my mouse moving, we're on the edge of the red on the eastern side of it. There was a trench war going on for 3.5 years. These people lived in trenches, and there was basically no movement back either way. So people lived peacefully for the next 3.5 years back in Karelia, farming and continuing their lives. And then finally in 44, Stalin decided that this has been long enough, that now he just came with a massive attack, and he pushed back all the Finnish troops, and he forced an armistice. So this, what you see on this map is up in the north. There are nickel mines, very lucrative place, which Russia wanted. And then here is another part, and then the biggest part, of course, was Karelia. And these, in the Moscow Peace Treaty, Finland was ordered to give these to Russia. And the third war that we had was 44-45, because Germany had helped Finland to fight the Soviet Union, and now the Soviet Union wanted Finland to like drive away all the Germans from Finland. So Finland had to push back all the Germans all the way up here to northern Finland, and then out through Sweden and into Norway to push them away. So while Germans north, they burnt everything here in Lapland. What Stalin thought would take 2 weeks took 4.5 years. And Finland, we still kept our independence. And I'm very happy for that. Okay, so that is a little bit of history of the Finnish wars and why we had to have this this separation of Karelia from Finland. And if I know you all know this map, but in case there's anyone, like I did send this YouTube link also to some of my family and some friends. So in case anyone is watching, this is also the Indian partition when in 1947, India was partitioned into West Pakistan and East Pakistan also. So partition literature, when I was, it's basically literature that, literature that describes events around the partitions before, during, after. But when we think of partition literature, we need to think of history according to whom, and who is it that is writing. And of course, much has been written about both of these partitions, both in historical accounts and fictional narratives. And there's always the official version, which is the history books. And those are generally written by men. And often when men write, usually when men write, they write about the macro view, the big events, this country took over that country, or etc. But then you have the personal narratives that focus on personal stories, small micro view of the events. And usually the author of these stories are either partition survivors or someone that they told their stories to. And we have to remember also that nothing is ever written in a vacuum, just out of the cuff, but everything really is colored with cultural and societal perspectives. And not only on the part of the author, but also the reader has his own perspective and worldview when he does the reading and interpretation of what is written. And when we look at these two partitions and these two countries, we can see that violence and human trauma, they are very similar themes in both these partitions, but the presentation can be very different. And that's, I think, where culture, society comes in. And just for an example, like these two ladies, Laila Hietamies, now everybody say that 3 times fast. No, Laila Hietamies and Eva Kilpi, they both were young when they had to leave Karelia. They're both Karelians, and their families had to evacuate when Russia was coming in. And people either they had a choice, either become Russian or you leave and relocate to Finland, to further into Finland, because Karelia is part of Finland, but they had to relocate further into Finland to avoid becoming Russians. So both of these ladies have written, like, chronological order Like here, the first book, Abandoned Houses and Deserted Yards, talks about during the Second War, continuation war, when people had to leave the second time. And this time they had to leave for good. And it's their experiences leaving the second time. And then the second book is on unknown paths and strange doors, when they had to go on unknown paths wherever they were placed, and to strange doors. And sometimes when they arrived to a house, it was sort of like flipping a coin. Were they welcomed, or were they with open arms? And it's like, come, let us help you. But many people also, they resented these people, Karelians, because they took their space. And because the government told, like, if you had a large, like for example, my mom's house at that time, they lived in Lapland, and they had a large house, and they were told also that because you have this, your house is this big, your farm is this big, you have to take this many people. So everyone had to take. If the government came and said you have to take, people had to take. There was no way around it. And then the third book, The Rivers of Life Ahead, this describes their experiences after they moved away from these where they were sent initially. They were able to finally move and get their own homes, own houses, own farms. So there's a chronological order in these books. And same with the second lady is Eva Kilpi, and hers is the time of winter war. Then there's interim peace, and the time of continuation war. She also describes her own. Both of these ladies have child narrators, and it's quite obvious they are actually describing their own lives through their books. And for India, I used these texts, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. Fantastic texts. Just gives a lot to think about. I mean, it was sometimes very hard to read these books and to see the reality of the Indian partition, and it just leaves one, I don't know, hard to describe. So culture, what is culture's characteristic set of values and traditions, norms, beliefs, etc. of a group. And it's a different worldviews that actually define and construct a culture. And culture is always dynamic. It keeps changing with time, and each generation adds to it. And each generation also changes it. And when you consider the generation of the partition, the people that lived at that time, and you consider how they were and how we are today, and each generation is changing. And especially like in Finland, I look at the men who fought at the war at that time. There were 18-year-old boys that went to war, and how they had the presence of mind to do that. I mean, of course, not everyone did. It was just, I can't imagine what it was like. I cannot. And the movies that we see, they give us a glimpse of it, but there's no way we can fathom what it was like to an 18-year-old boy. Like my dad was 17 when he went to war. He wanted to go even a little early. Why did he want to go? I don't know. I never got to ask him. I was too young when he passed, but I didn't understand it that time. But now I would love to know why my dad wanted to go early, because usually you go at the age of 18. But my dad also, he wanted to join early, and he was only 17. But anyway, so, and in some countries, religion is very strongly intertwined with society and culture. And again, India and Finland, there's a big difference here, because in India, religion is much more openly practiced than it is in Finland. And it affects people's choices and psyche in a different way in India than it does in Finland. And so culture, society, religion, they all affect memory, and memory affects the narrative technique. And like I mentioned, that in the Finnish texts, I just couldn't find any violence toward women recorded. And I was wondering why. And this is one reason why. Shame culture. And it's a culture where conformity of behavior is maintained by fear of being shamed. And this is definitely part of every society to some extent. In some places more, and in some less. But shame is a paralyzing tool used by patriarchy, for example, and patriarchy has taken it beyond the individual to family and community and religion and society. And in Finland, this shame culture was introduced already in I think it was in 1700s, when Finland was ruled by Sweden, and the Swedish clergy was using shame culture to keep Finns in line. It was so much easier to manipulate the Finnish people by using this tool. And also in Finland, and I think like that is still very prevalent today. Shame culture here it's like, you know, saving face is very important to Finns as well. One thing is like, you know, I'm thinking of like just English language and how an average Finn will not speak English unless they know they can speak it grammatically correct, because most Finns don't like to be laughed at. And I mean, nobody likes to be laughed at, but for a Finn, speaking on, like, I'm not a typical Finn in a sense that I've been outside of Finland for so long that I don't care. I don't mind making mistakes. I don't mind being laughed at. I laugh at myself, especially when you're learning a language. And making mistakes, that's good for you at that time. But shame is, there was one politician in Finland who, she had to work, you know, of course, with like, you know, other nations, and she was a prime minister. So she had to actually speak to other people and other nations and other prime ministers. And Finnish people laughed at her English, although she was courageous enough to use her English. But other Finns laughed at her Finnish. I mean, her English. I just remember that I mean, it was years ago, but I just remember how she was made fun of just because the way she spoke English. So even today, shame culture is very much being used in Finland. And also we have a collective shame, because like I mentioned earlier, Germany helped Finland. But during World War II, when small Finland was fighting this massive Soviet Union, we ran out of men, we ran out of guns, we ran out of airplanes, we ran out of everything. And we were asking help from the States, France, England, different places. We were asking, would you please help us? Nobody would, because of it was politically so hard to stay balanced in Europe at that time. So they didn't want to mess with against the Soviet Union. So then finally Germany said, we'll help you. And if Germany had not come to the aid of Finland, if they hadn't come with their airplanes and helped us, I would be Russian today. So Germany helped us, but it's been a shameful thing ever since, because Finland's ally. So that has been a collective shame to Finland, even to this day. And there was this, here's this, it's called Lotta's Värld organization. Women also wanted to be patriotic. They also wanted to go and take part in the war efforts, but they couldn't, because women couldn't enlist. So about 122,000 women, they took part in this organization. It was very patriotic. They were the ones, they were nurses. They were the ones who went to the very front lines, and they took care of the canteen, that men had something to, every day Finnish soldiers ate hot meals. They had coffee, they had pastry and all these things. These women, they baked how many hundreds of kilos of bread every day for the Finnish soldiers to eat. So these women took part in war efforts this way. They also were the aircraft, they kept watch against the aircrafts and the bombers and what have. So they had a big part in this war. But when the war was over, the Soviet Union said, this organization is too patriotic, you have to dismantle it. And they made sure that these women were mocked, they were labeled loose, they were, I mean, all kinds of insinuations. And these women suffered shame. And for years, I think it was like at least 50 years after the war, they denied their involvement. They burned their uniforms. They just didn't want to have anything to do with the fact that they had been part of this organization. But today, these women are hailed as heroes, just like the soldiers themselves were. And there's like 7,000 of them left today, 70 years later. So anyways, all this shame causes silence. Like these women, they did not want to talk about their involvement in the war. So culture of silence is, there's a cause and effect between shame and culture of silence. And also in Indian narratives that comes through. And there's a guilt culture versus shame culture. Guilt culture is basically how it's an internalized conviction of sin and how you feel about something. But then the shame culture is an external sanction. It's how society honors or excludes a person. And in India, as well as in Finland, shame is a form of control. And there are diverse do's and don'ts between communities and genders. And for example, a widow and a widower. A widower is allowed, like in India, is allowed to marry again, but a widow, it's not looked upon very nicely. It's not acceptable. So anyways, but along with shame culture goes honor. And it's the honor of the community and the family or the religion or society that is on the line. So shame is used to sustain those norms. And in order to belong, you must comply. And one example is in Sahani's Damas, and a Pandit and his wife, their daughter was kidnapped. And someone offered to locate the daughter, and they say that it's okay, don't do that. She's probably been soiled by now. And what use is she to us anymore? Because her reputation is gone. And if she came back, even their reputation would be gone. These things are like so hard to, I mean, this goes on everywhere, of course. I mean, I'm not saying this is only in India, but it's like these kind of concepts are just hard to fathom. And even Urvashi Butalia suggests that virtually every family had a history of being both victims or aggressors in the violence. And for example, I'm sure you're familiar with Bir Bahadur Singh's and his their communal sacrifice, and how he killed the women in his family to keep them from being kidnapped and soiled, to save the reputation of the community. And so no matter what the culture is, where the culture is, shame inevitably leads to silence, which is also a societal construction, and rather leaves their wounds shrouded in silence. So when we think of the culture and how it affects memory, like for example, these I mean, yeah, like these ladies that I interviewed, or the books I read, and how they describe their memories, and how again we have the public and national, which is basically the history books and the large events, and then we have the personal and the private memory, which is the household stories, the oral tradition, and so forth. So what affects memory? Memory, and we all know that memory is malleable and pliable. It's susceptible to outside influences. There are internal and external effects on memory, like during war in Finland, when Finland attacked Russia, when Finland attacked Russia, we were able to say whatever. But then toward the end of the war, when Russia was starting to be the winner, it became very clear that we couldn't say Finnish people could not say everything. So the government imposed very, very strict censorship on everything. So what the soldiers wrote home to their families was censored. What the families wrote to the soldiers was censored, because the collective good and the reputation of the nation was on the line. So collective good, everybody needs to remain hopeful. Everybody needs to remain upbeat and come on, we can do it. So nothing negative should be said, and also definitely nothing negative about Russia. So very strong and strict censorship, and also self-preservation and suppression of unpleasant and undesirable thoughts. Of course, that is always affecting our memories. Our memories change over time, especially of things that are not so pleasant. And for example, Eva Kilpi and these three, Winter War and then Interim Peace and the Continuation War, these books, she describes how there's a very thin line between remembering and forgetting, and how other people's memories often influence someone's own. She was questioning the validity of what she remembered, because, for example, she always said that she was afraid of water. But then later on, she realized that she remembered this one incident. She was by the lake, and she was on a pier with her mother. And her mother slipped on a piece of soap, and she slipped and she fell into the water. So since then, her mother was afraid of water. So Eva Kilpi, she somehow, because she often heard that same story, she internalized that memory as her own. So in her mind, she's afraid of water. And she wrote also because to her, it was important to share her memories and share her stories to keep history alive and being history from being repeated. And in Indian narratives, Bhalla also suggests, just like Kilpi, in his introduction to his short stories, that one's memory is seldom purely one's own. And Urvashi Butalia says how memory is never pure or unmediated. It's always affected by something else. And how male and female, again, here we see men remember different things and women remember different things. Most often a woman, what she thinks first is her family, her children, and how all these big events affect her family and her children. While men think of, how does this affect India? How does this affect Finland or Karelia? Bigger aspects of the situation. And also reading all these different books and commentaries, and especially Urvashi Butalia also commented on it many times, was the selectivity of memory and how people think, when are they talking to, with whom are they talking to? With whom are they talking? And because many times these survivors, they didn't want to talk to anybody else except one who had also experienced the same thing, because to them it was easier. One look can express a hurt, a pain. And many of us who were not there, we might not understand it. We will not be able to understand the deeper hurt. We can see something, we can read it, we can watch a movie, but we don't really know what actually was there. And Babsi Sid was cracking India. What a beautiful story. I mean, beautiful narrative of what happened. And she also uses, just like Hietamies and Kilpi, she also uses child's perspective. And it's so much easier for them to question all the norms and religious differences and all the differences, all the communal loyalty, and then all of a sudden, overnight, like in India, overnight, the communal hatred and violence. And as a child, you can question those things. When an adult is not allowed that anymore, it's like you're supposed to know better. And it has been said, in Finnish it says, aika kultaa muistot, but time heals all wounds. But when you really think about it, it's like, does it heal those wounds, or does it just make it easier to cover them or bury them somewhere very deep? Because Cracking India was made into a movie. Deepa Mehta made it into a movie, Earth. And in the very end of the movie, there's a very short clip of Sidhva herself. She's walking in the garden and she sits at the fountain, and she still laments. She's still sorry. She still can't forgive. She doesn't seem to be able to forgive herself still that she betrayed her Aya when Ice Candy Man came to take her. So does time really heal wounds, or do those wounds just become like, I guess they're just kind of like part of one's life, and they become one part of one's life, but they don't heal. And in an interview with Alok Bhalla, Sid one time said that she also writes because one feels that history will teach people some lessons, urge them not to repeat old mistakes. I don't know, looking at the world today, I don't know how much we have learned from these past mistakes and from history. Seems like it's just getting worse. And so in conclusion, basically, freedom came at a high cost to individuals. People lost property, homes, family, citizenship. Often they also lost their voice because they can't talk about it. They are living in silence. It's really shrouded in silence. And that voice is, what is it now? It's over 70 years from that time. And there's very few people left that actually went through those experiences. And will we remember them when they're gone? It's like, that's why these books are so important. And I think that's why it's important to read about these books, read these books, talk about these books, and also make presentations about these books so that people will not forget. Like in 1945 in Finland, behavior was controlled by that which was good, appropriate, and socially acceptable for the society as a whole. And same in India, the good of the community outweighed the importance of individuals. And that's why, I mean, we need to hear those individual stories. And that's why these kinds of little webinars are also, and these, Dr. Bryan's class on partition literature, so important. I remember when I was in Delhi and I did my BA in English, and these girls had just come from high school, and we had a class on partition literature. And the teacher, I don't think she had gone through it herself, but maybe her parents had. But it was very personal to her. And the way these girls treated these stories, they were like, oh, I don't want to hear those. I don't want to read those. Oh, it's too much. It's like, they didn't even want to read those stories. And I hope that we can somehow keep these stories alive, because it is part of our history and we do need to remember it. And sorry, I keep diverting, but any deviation faced social shaming and led to silence, like it is today. If I do something that other people laugh at me or they try to shame me, I probably won't talk about it again. It's ongoing cause and effect relationship. And often these returning soldiers and partition survivors, they are left with their suppressed memories and depression. Actually, this weekend, today I'm going to go to my sister's place in Lapland, and her neighbor is a 96-year-old man. And just this past week, my sister actually met him finally. And he was 18 when he was at war. He was in the Winter War, and he was 18. And some of the stories my sister was sharing, I can't wait to go knock on that man's door and to hear some of his memories. He didn't seem depressed, which is amazing. And especially like in Finland, where nothing untoward or bad is talked about. These two women, Nare and Kirves, they wrote a book, sort of like a book like Urvashi Butalian's The Other Side of Silence, but they wrote that about the Finnish war. And they talk about memory in that also, and how it can turn something awful into something good, suffering into heroism. Because in our minds, or the person who's trying to remember, it's like their modified memory. It's like their memory is affected by so many things that what they actually remember, who knows if it's what actually happened. So well, especially when we know that during war and during these upsetting events, there's so much violence that takes place. So how can they write like that as if nothing ever happened? Something happened to their memory. So, and also the prince says that forgetting and misremembering may be very adaptive. And silence is also a form of self-preservation. And that is definitely true. That is probably also the case with these Finnish authors. And reason for not sharing is often communal. With silence, we want to shield the younger generations. It's like, why make him feel bad? Why cause them pain and cause them hurt? But still, Sidva, Hiramies, and Kilpi, they all use child narrators to question the arbitrary and confusing nature of these partitions. So, and many told stories, but majority did not, leaving most of the household narratives shrouded in silence. And so society, culture, religion, they're all intertwined, and they affect memory, and memory affects narrative technique. And one's memory is impacted by the desire to protect self and loved ones. So we have seen death and destruction in the wake of these two partitions. But we've also seen nations, communities, individuals rise up from the ashes like the mythological phoenix. Isn't that right? And George Santayana's words, they ring true even today, that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And I think some are determined to forget the past so that they can repeat it. That's what it seems like is happening today in the world. But let's rather not forget. Let's try to remember these people's sacrifice, the sacrifice that our grandparents, our parents paid for our freedom. Thank you. So any questions, comments, arguments?
Thank you, Dr. Valenius, for this very interesting and thought-provoking masterclass on partition and culture. And I'm sure the audience here is waiting to ask you questions. And without further, waste of time, I would request you all to please raise your hands and address your questions to our resource person, Dr. Valenius.
Or you can type them if you want to, whichever is easier. Put them in the chat. If you have any questions about anything.
I think Brian can start. Brian.
Dr. Brian?
Dr. Brian?
He left. There you are.
Yeah, leaving and entering, they're all part of life. I love the opening where you showed us darkness and light from your window. And that's what writers do. They look out of the window and they are able to assimilate so much. And it really took me back to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where it says, from darkness lead me to light. And this is what I've been trying to, instill in our students, and they're part of this class, and I hope they will be asking you questions to sensitize them to the ramifications of a received history, which is often false. So students in the class like Sarisha and Riva, I invite you to ask your questions because they've been very well thought out and very well crafted. I hope they can get them across to you in their own voices. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Who was it?
Sirisha, are you there? Risha, please ask your questions.
I won't bite.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Good morning. Who's talking? Riva.
This is Riva.
Hi.
Ma'am, I wanted to know whether do you think that the children who had witnessed the partition and violence associated with it would have a healthy psychological development and a happy life ahead?
You know what? I just finished reading a book. It's called the Librarian of Auschwitz. And in this book, this 10-year-old girl, she ended up in one of the Jewish concentration camps, and she was there for 6 years, and she saw awful lot of so many horrible things. But I just finished reading the book, and today she's 93 years old, and she chose not to be bitter. She chose to look forward. She chose to deal with it in a way that she has been able to live her life very productively and very happy. She's always happy, and I think it's a choice, because she lost her family. Her mother died 2 weeks after the British came and freed them. And of course, she was broken that time. She did lose her faith in God, but still she was able to go on with life, and she helps others who have gone through similar situations. So yes, I believe they can have a very healthy psychological effect on others also. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm Sarisha.
Hi, Sarisha.
Ma'am, I wanted to know why women were not taken into consideration.
Can you say that again? You faded away just a little bit.
Why women were not taken into consideration and were not given importance in partition?
Who?
Correct.
Women?
Yes, ma'am. Why women were not taken into consideration and were not given importance in partition?
It must be I mean, it's a world of men, and it was that time even more so. It was a world of men, and women had a part in it. Women had a big part, and but you have to look for those stories that where women have a big part of. They were mostly the ones who I don't know how to say it. When you think of the tools of war, that was one. Women are so important and women are so important to families, to communities, to societies, that when you even look at the Indian partition and how it was the women that were used to try to hurt the other community, because they knew that if they can get to women, they can get to the community. So in that sense, I think one can think that women had a very big part in that partition. It wasn't brought out this way, but when you think of it, that a woman is, without a woman, there is no community. I mean, like there is, yeah. So I think it doesn't make any sense. Anybody, Dr. Glennis, Dr. Brian, does that make any sense? Sarisha,
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there
Dr.
was
Glennis,
one more
does it make any?
question.
No, I think what you've said is right. It doesn't. Okay. We have a host of questions waiting lined up here, Dr. Valenius. We have Dr. Deepa Prajit here, who herself has worked on partition, particularly on the narratives of India. Okay, and she's here with her
She's
students.
asking,
Yeah,
she's
she wants.
asking about the memory. If the memory
Yes.
can we see memory as part of societal pressure so they can be selective? I think the societal pressure will definitely affect memory and make memory selective. Like, definitely. I mean, especially in Finland, the societal pressure was so much that the memory, I believe their memories have changed. And they have written so differently about the partition and their experiences during the war, I think.
Dr. Deepa, can you please unmute yourself and ask the questions on behalf of the students, please? Dr. Deepa, are you in?
And also she was saying that not wanting to listen and an attempt to, oh, okay, there you are.
Hi, Lee. Congratulations for your PhD. One of my students wanted to know whether nationalism contributed to the violence. It was seen as a very masculine spirit.
Definitely. I think so. Definitely. Don't you agree?
Yes, even I was quite taken up with that question because, you know, in that patriarchal world, it was always men who were after their freedom. Women's freedom just didn't matter.
That's right. And they were just a pawn basically in the game of who's the leader, who's in charge now.
Very true. And they also became a target practice for, you know, enacting revenge.
That's very true.
So,
But to think of those, like, you know, I was so I was so amazed at those women, though, like the stories of the rehabilitated women in India and how they so many times they just chose, though everything that was done to them, but they chose to they to me they really are like the picture of the mythological phoenix rising from the ashes, because they adjust. Like my mom always used to say, like, you know, why bother complaining? You can't do anything about it. Adjust. You adjust. And women, like the Indian time, they were master at adjusting. I salute them. The way they were able to hold on to life and adjust to the situation where they were at. I mean, they were, to me, like the Indian women at that time, they were just quite an example.
yeah.
What do you think?
And the state also failed them. You know, there was no way that that trauma was ameliorated at any stage.
No. And it was
absolutely no help from any quarter, neither the family nor the state.
And it was made worse by the fact that even if they were to be rehabilitated, their families wouldn't want them back. So
many narratives speak of families virtually closing the doors on their food.
Yeah,
shocking.
That should be another study in itself. And it's like even in Finland, I would love to write about the women who took part and just like somehow build them up, because women are so often left. They're not written about in that way. So in the same way, women that were rehabilitated in India, there should be a book about them, and there should be like yeah.
Brian is waiting to ask something, I guess.
Sorry.
Yeah, Glenys, thank you. Aldina will speak on memory.
No, I'm not speaking on memory. I'm actually, hi, Lily. I thought I would say hi to you because I felt so happy to know that you were coming here, and I was listening a bit. I came in a little late, so hello, and I'm really impressed. Thank you for sharing your views with us.
Okay.
Yes, how are you doing? Are you doing some running there as well? Sorry, a little bit off the topic, but...
I do. It was a lot of snow for the past few weeks, but now it's kind of melting, so the paths are clear. So yes, definitely running again.
For those of you who don't know, Lily is such an avid runner. I mean, she just loves to run, and I used to run with her on the beach sometimes. So that's how I know her. Yes, but I just had a question on memory, because a lot of things that happened during war happen also at there has been a pre-war history as well, so there will be a lot of stuff between people of that goes into your subconscious mind, and though you might try to fight it at that time, it does come up. And I think post-war and later, when leaders, like you can see it happening across the world, they want to bring about hatred, they will trigger that kind of animosity and and go back to that particular time frame. So I just thought I would share this, and with women as well. A lot of I agree with you completely that women are second in command, but they are actually the driving force between lives of people and the change that you see around. So, yes, so those are my comments. Yeah, thank you, Lily. It's really nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah,
I think
bye.
that's even little more about that. I mean, we all have filters that we think through. We all of our thoughts and before we speak, usually it goes through a filter, and usually our filter is modified and determined by the society and culture. But then during the time of war, or like the Indian partition, for example, those filters are taken away. So then maybe something that is down deep will actually come out when that filter is removed. So that's very true. Ma'am, I wanted a clarification on what exactly does suffering into heroism mean? Okay. Like, for example, I was just talking about the Indian women. Suffering into heroism means, for example, the Indian women, they suffered. But to me, like, for example, they almost seem like heroes, the way they can adjusted and conducted their lives despite their plight and their having been kidnapped and so forth. That's one way, definitely, of looking at suffering into heroism. But then also, I think it's more like maybe a metaphor of seeing something awful happen, but then when asked about it, like those ladies I interviewed, I'm sure they saw something. They were there. I mean, you see death everywhere. You're one of those Lotta women who worked at the front lines. For sure, you see horrible things. And sometimes horrible things happen to those Lotta women by different soldiers or by the enemy soldiers. And but in their mind, 70 years later, they basically just said like, no, nothing happened. They smiled and their voice was like, no, nothing happened. So maybe something like that. It's like, it's more of a metaphor of how time changes our mind, our memory. Aisha is asking, why does shame culture play a role in the overall contentment of a country? I think in a way that the shame culture is one way to keep individuals in line. When the good of the collective good and the good of the nation, the reputation, especially when it's the reputation of the nation is on the line. If individuals are not behaving properly, then shaming them into behaving, because the societal pressure, when one person is shamed, like when one person is shamed, then the societal pressure makes that person change their behavior to be more according to everybody, to the accepted method, norm. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Doctor, these are questions by students and they're texting me because they're unable to unmute or there's some technical difficulty. I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure you answered the question correctly. Next, Rania asks that you said that time doesn't heal wounds. Don't you think it actually inculcates in us a feeling of strength to learn from the past and make a better future? That's what she's trying to say. Why do you say that time doesn't heal wounds?
Because time doesn't heal wounds. Yeah, like you look at Bapsi Sitwa and what she said in the end of that movie. She had betrayed her maid, Aya. The ice candy man came to get her from the house. She betrayed her. And she was, how old was she? She was 10, 12, 11, something like that. And still, as an adult woman, she still remembers and she still is hurt by her own actions. That's what I mean by time doesn't heal wounds. And that, but also that it doesn't really have, we have to learn from the past. I think that is a different thing than time doesn't heal wounds. That time doesn't heal wounds is somebody who's actually gone through it, who's actually been there, who's actually been hurt. Like the woman who was in Auschwitz. Those wounds have not been healed, but she has mentally, she has been able to conquer those wounds and those that hurt. But she has become victorious, and she's able to help others, and she's able to teach others about the past. Although the time has not healed her wounds, she's able to help others understand that this is history and this should not be repeated. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It does.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
There are a lot of questions in the chat box.
Yeah, women. Miss Singh says that women have sealed their lips to the atrocities of the Indian partition, but remain bitter and vengeful. I agree. She said, in my personal experience, and I say I agree, and men have by and large moved on. I think it's also partly men, maybe men talk. I mean, first of all, men and women are different. We experience things differently. We experience. Are you there?
Okay. Hi, I will speak. Yeah. Okay. My in-laws were from Punjab, from Gurdaspur district. And while my father-in-law could talk about a very dear Muslim friend who he lost because, to the partition, my mother-in-law was absolutely tight-lipped, and they carried this vengeance with a kind of anti-Muslim feeling and, all of that. And I have many stories. I had a teacher who was a Hindi English teacher in class 8 who talked about, who again, so said a little thing about how, little stories about how babies were treated, about the slaughter and everything. But very soon she shut up because it was not very much encouraged in school for a teacher, for an English teacher to be sharing these experiences. Yeah. and my mother comes from a place called Mao, which is the center of India, and a lot of Sindhis gravitated there. She talks about, she's with me these days in Goa, and she had the same thing. While the doctor, they had these Sindhi doctors, and all of them were chatty and were fine and made friends and moved on, and also had Muslim friends. I mean, in the beginning, it panned out in India as kind of an anti-Muslim feeling, which was so strong, especially in small town India, kind of thing. Yeah. But the women, like, there was this doctor who used to go to, when we used to go to visit my grandparents, and the women were like, so they had like such a terrible hostility to even talking about even saying the word Pakistan was something which they just couldn't bear. Yeah. Yeah, I'll stop there because I just had to rush somewhere. I mean, just help someone with something. I'll be back in a minute though.
Wow, that's amazing. That must have something also to do with the way women and men are different and how we process things and also our experiences. The women did not experience the same thing as men did. So that must also contribute to that kind of residual hatred, vengeful feeling. Ma'am, where did that go? Ma'am, do you feel that culture shaming could be used as a tool in our present day situation? Definitely. I think it's used today, definitely. It's used definitely among the youth, like kids. Kids can be so brutal. And if somebody is a little bit different, or if you're not part of their group, or people can be very, kids, especially kids, can be very vicious when it comes to shaming somebody else. Fat shaming, for example, today. There are so many ways to shame a person today. It's awful. It's definitely being used today. English department is turning into a culture studies. Yeah. Something about otherness. In Finland, even today, we treat many Finns treat Russians still as the other, because of what they did, because of history, but not the younger generation. Younger generation, even in Finland, they hardly know about it. Some even, I've heard that they don't even know the date of independence, like the year of independence of Finland. They are so involved with their phones and their groups and their social media that they are not aware of reality. So I think the otherness is not the case as much anymore in terms of Russia and Finland as it is even my generation. I still know, and of course now after my PhD, I know it's much closer to my heart. But otherness that way, and also in India, it's like, unfortunately, the divide that was really deep during the partition, it is still there, and there's very much the other culture there also between the two religions, the main religion, and that's so unfortunate. And how the otherness also, it was during the partition. It's like overnight, the other became the enemy. It's like we were friends before. People were friends before, but then overnight they became the other.
Thank you, Lee. If we could just take one last question.
What is that Sibelius in Finland? Let's talk about it now. What are we? I don't have to leave in a hurry.
What's that? What do you want? Sibelius? You mean to play it?
No, what is your view of Sibelius? I mean, we have featured a lot of Sibelius on the national channel of All India Radio. And Finlandia, of course, is an ode to the spirit of the Finnish people. So do you see music or Western classical music of Finland having a role to play in conscientizing the Finnish people about their identity?
This one definitely, Finlandia, that piece definitely, and Sibelius, he's like the national hero in Finland. So his music definitely, classical music. I think music is a big part of Finnish identity. When I was growing up, every kid learned an instrument. Even I played the violin. And I think that's it's a big part of the Finnish culture, and yeah, it is definitely a part of our identity as well. I think I don't know as much today because of everything has changed today. It's like the technology has taken us to a different level of existence, and a lot of it is now just social media. It's like kids are different today, but the earlier generations, yes, definitely music is a big part of it, and Sibelius especially.
It's very interesting, Lee, that at the moment you're speaking about, that's in the 1940s, 50s, there is this there's this move in Western classical music to retrieve a national identity for music, particularly in Russia, where you have Dvorak, you have Tchaikovsky, you have Prokofiev, and later on Janacek. And at the same time, you have Sibelius in Finlandia. So although ostensibly, as the main drift of our argument says, Russia was the other of Finland, in music they were not, because each was forging their own identity, isn't it?
But the thing is, like, so many times it's, I mean, there's one movie about the war between Finland and India. It's a perfect depiction of this. But it's like, it's the leaders that fight. It's not always the small people. And in this movie, in the very end of the movie, when the peace treaty is signed and peace starts, right before that, there's this massive bomb, boom. It's all this bombing. Russians are bombing. And the Finns are basically just covering like this because they have no more bullets and they have nothing. So, but when all of a sudden it's just quiet. And these people, the soldiers, the Russian and the Finnish soldiers, they actually approach each other, they shake hands, and they go their way. So it's like they were just doing what they were told. So in that sense, like not everybody in Russia is the other. But I think that's a lot of times that is how it is in many conflicts. It's the leaders that fight through their people. And their people are just doing what they're told. Do you agree?
Thank you. I think that was well said. Let music live on.
Yes, absolutely. And literature.
Right. Absolutely.
The question popping in from Sarisha, why there is always religious differences in partition?
Like, like in India, there is two big, in Finland, it wasn't part of it at all. In Finland, it was a matter of geography. Stalin wanted Finland. There was nothing to do with religion. It was just basically, it was political and geographical. He wanted Finland to be a buffer against Germany, who was coming through Norway. So that was the case. But in India, but isn't it like, it's not only with the partition, I'm sure it was before, like, I forget who it was. Was it Alok Pallava or who said it? But there's always been the little antagonism even before, but people have lived with it. But then because of what happened when the British left, it was such a volatile situation that all the filters that people had before, they just erupted, and they just, that's when all the violence broke out. But it doesn't have to be like that today. It doesn't have to be. Because, like, people can live, we can think of humanity and think if we can look at another person as a human being rather than a religious entity or identity. And same with like nationalities. I shouldn't look at Russians like my enemy. I should look at Russians like a Russian, like a human. But unfortunately, most people don't choose to do that. I don't know why. I don't know why.
A comment from Lauren, because you answered a question earlier. She says, isn't culture shaming a way to mold history into something that it is not? And doesn't it have serious repercussions? And to be honest, it's not only about culture shaming, but in general, the way history is told, there is so much hate generated, and hate is inherited, as I would like to say that, right?
Absolutely. And even shaming is like, I think it's hatred, because I don't, or it's dislike. I don't like you. I don't like the way you look. I don't like the way you talk. I don't like the way you believe. I don't like, and that's why I shame you to be more like me. And that's not right. Can you imagine if we were all like me? That would be an awful world. It's like, we need diversity. It's like India, the land of diversity. That's what it should be. Finland, the land of diversity. No, we're not. We're very homogenous. We're too homogenous, I think, at times. It's like, we're too by the book all the time. But the diversity that has always been like, it's been the richness of India. And it would be wonderful to, like, you know, even just do my own little part to be all inclusive and accept other people who are different, who think different. Have a healthy debate on something instead of shame you for thinking different than I do, but rather just agree to disagree. But it's greed and they want power. They're greedy. They want power, and they want to, like, you know, control people into, and therefore they shame them into doing what they want. I'm saying, and not they as in it, just in general, whoever does the shaming is that's, I think. What do you think, Aisha?
Absolutely, I completely agree. And I think it's important for us to think of as individuals, not how can we change that at our level. That's the important dialogue that we need to have.
Yeah, thinking of, look, what can I do? How can I be different? Can I help someone today? Help somebody who's different today. If I'm a Christian, help a Hindu today. If I'm a Catholic, help a Muslim today. If Christians, Catholics, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, whoever. It's like, let's help each other. Let's think about each other as humans. And some of the world leaders, they are, like, you know, talking about unity, but then on the right hand, they, like, you know, talk about unity. Left hand here is like banging on somebody's head. So it's like, let's not be hypocrites, but let's just look inside and start with ourselves. And if I can try to make it, if we all try to make a difference, that might make a big difference.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Neha is saying that initially people were forced to remain quiet when their letters were censored. But now, why do people choose to remain quiet about the times they have suffered? The thing is, there's generational difference in, like, the generation, the books that I read are written by people who went through partition. So that generation, Finnish people, especially like Finnish people, were very obedient people on the average. You tell us to jump, we say how high. And you go to a restaurant, you order chicken, and they bring you pea soup. You say, like, it's okay, I'll eat the pea soup. So we don't want to ruffle any feathers ever, anywhere. We don't want to draw any attention to ourselves. That's how that generation was. But today's generation is very different. I read one book that was written by, I think she's 30, and she wrote, oh my goodness, she wrote, like, you know, all kinds. She was very graphic in her descriptions of what happened to women during the war in Ukraine against Russia. Oh my goodness, she was graphic. But she's different generation. She's not that generation that adhered to rules and was thinking of the good of the community at that time and the reputation of the nation. Like my mom, boy, she did not want to bother people. She did not want to complain about anything. She was like those women in India who adjusted, who were kidnapped and whatever, their lives changed, but they adjusted. My mom was that type too. I'm a little different. And then the next generation from me will be very different. So they are not careful anymore about what they write. That was that generation. I'm kind of like balancing between the two. It's like I'm sort of like old-fashioned, but then I'm also a little bit like on the next generation side. Does that answer your question?
I think we have a host of questions which are popping up, with students, particularly those on the YouTube link, but we'll send them to you privately, Lee. At the moment, it's time to draw the curtains on this masterclass, which was supposed to be for an hour, but it has extended to 1 hour and 30 minutes. And I'm sure it has incited a lot of questions. It has evoked thoughts, and it has been so interest-evoking that we will carry this as a discussion in our classrooms as well, where we teach partition literature. We are very grateful to so many students who have joined us, students from Carmel College for Women, students from other colleges, particularly from Government College Kepe, with their head of department, Dr. Deepa Prajit, who herself has completed her PhD on partition. And we have also a lot of other literature enthusiasts who have joined us today on the YouTube link. Quite a lot of them who have pinged in and also asked their questions. We would now close the curtains with the vote of thanks, which I request my colleague, Ms. Ashwini Kumar, to kindly come live and propose the vote of thanks on behalf of Carmel College and the Department of English.
Thank you, Dr. Mendonça. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, right.
Let me begin by thanking the officiating principal of Carmel College, Dr. Aldina Braganza. Thank you, ma'am, for coming all the way to the department to be with us and support us in this venture. I thank Mrs. Roxana Singh, Head of Department of English, Carmel College, for spearheading this masterclass and making sure all the demands of this masterclass were met. A big thank you to Dr. Mendonça, Janice Mendonça, the creative mind behind this masterclass. Thank you for introducing us to Dr. Valenius. And now the biggest thank you to the speaker of the day, to you, Ms. Lee, Dr. Valenius.
Thank you very much.
Collaborating and deliberating on such a crucial yet sensitive topic. I don't think 2 hours are enough to even discuss or engage in a discourse on a topic like this. But thank you so much for your efforts. Thank you to Meriston Harish, the Department of IT, for all the technical assistance. Thank you, Ms. Jolene D'Souza, for designing the poster for the masterclass. And a big thank you to all the participants, our students, teachers from other colleges and other departments, and literature enthusiasts, without whom this masterclass would not be a success. Thank you to all. Have a nice day.
Thanks so much.
So Ashwini, for this, for the vote of thanks. Lee, would you like to have the final word, and a final word for those who are particularly studying partition literature, the students who will be attending this course, which is part of their curriculum this semester. The final word for them, for Lee, from Lee.
I'm so privileged to have been in Goa University and to study there in India and do my PhD there, and to be able to dive deeper into the partition literature, that Indian partition literature, and literally, I mean, the women of that are so the unspoken, unsung heroes of the partition. I really think someone should take up the task and write about them, study them, write about them, and give them the recognition that they should have. But anyways, I just want to encourage you to, especially in terms of partition literature, to not look at it as something awful because of how things are described or what happened and what happened to women, but to take it as part of your history. And like I take the 3 wars, I take it as part of my history. And I am very thankful for those who did go through it for me, and that I have what I have today. And the same with the students there. I just pray that you would really take this opportunity to dive into these deep truths about your history, your partition, and to appreciate that unity, and that the humanness that in all of us, that we are all human, we're all part of humanity, and we really should pull together. We should, at least we should learn to unite in being human, and appreciate each other, and to I think that's why we read literature too, is like we We read other people's lives and we learn from those lives and learn from these narratives that we read about the partition. We learn about their lives, their attitudes, how they adjusted their attitudes and how they made it through these difficult times. And sometimes in our lives, we have to go through difficult times and we have to learn to adjust. And I think these narratives are a great example of that. And just enjoy learning, don't ever stop learning. I think that's one thing that you have to promise, that you never stop learning and learning from the past, and that it would not be repeated. Is that good?
Very good. I think that's a wonderful, positive, and optimistic note that we are ending this masterclass on. This indeed has been a very eventful and memorable experience for us to share. Thank you, Lee, for being this bridge between the two cultures, Finland and India, and also linking us to these two partitions which happen simultaneously, particularly the partition of Finland, which we were quite unaware of. This is a new experience for us. This is a new encounter for us, and something new to learn. And the comparative perspective was quite enlightening. Thank you, Lee. May I request the admin to please switch off the record button. And for those who would like to leave and join your classrooms, I say a warm thank you on behalf of all of you to Dr. Lee Wallenius for being part of this masterclass, for being our resource person for today.
So much. I really enjoyed spending time with you. And hopefully, as soon as I come to Goa again, when the borders open, I'll come and visit.
Oh, that will be a delightful experience to have you back here in India. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Dr. Govind.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for being part of this event.
Bye.
We're all signing off from
you.
Tamil College.
Signing off from Finland.
Love and peace. Thank you.
The
Take a
world
picture.
is so small.
Okay. Can we all have a picture? Can we all come live and have a picture? Yeah. Can we all have a picture? Yeah. This is just for the picture and the record. Can students come in live, for those who are there? For the picture, please. For those who can come in live for the picture. Oh, thank you, Rubina. Yeah.
Smile.
Smile, everybody. Hi, Zena. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. This is just the picture.
Thanks so much. Really enjoyed it.
Took it now?
And hopefully I'll meet you all soon.
Yes. Please do visit us when you come down to India.
Okay.
Thank
all
you,
right.
everybody. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely Easter. Have an excellent Easter. Hop
Oh dear.
Hop like bunnies for the egg hunt.
Hey, wait. You gotta see this.
Oh, so beautiful.
This is like a little bit of grass, and whenever this is grown, I'll put a little chick in there or a little egg. So.
Okay, so that's your Easter
One
souvenir. Oh, sweet.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
All.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining in.